We are gathered here today for what has become one of our most anticipated shows of the season. It is the Man vs. Machine recap show. Silva, welcome. How's it going?
It's going really well. I anticipate another victory today. And I just want to make sure that Leone doesn't turn this into another debate show. This is a reaction show, Leone, because I know that he's been goading me through private back channels.
Leone, how's it going today? Representing the machines, of course.
Yeah, I appreciate Evan preemptively trying to stymie the free flow of ideas in order to get his propaganda into the forefront with no pushback. I also appreciate that we have made Levitan so incredibly nervous for this because me and Silva are just squabbling in DMs when Levitan's like, I thought we were just having fun. This is the whole point.
I mean, that's how I rank.
That was
like,
the entire.
I rank really aggressively on good players.
No, this is not about fun whatsoever.
You know, I think that like when I see people in public, they're going to come up to me and be like, you were an idiot. You said this about this player. They don't. They come up to me and they say, you screwed up the man versus machine debates. I'm like, leave me alone, man. I put so much effort into all this other stuff and people are all over me about the man versus machine results. It's insane. All right. On today's show, we are going to have some old-fashioned actual fun. You will remember back in August, we did man versus machine, in which Silva, aka Man, and Leone, aka Machine, debated their biggest rankings disagreements.
Where you take those players has a really huge impact on whether or not.
Today, producer Ryan is going to play clips from that debate, and I will declare a winner. So once and for all, we can settle who won Man vs. Machine 2025. All right, let's get into it here. Producer Ryan, player one, Jameson Williams. Silva has Jameson Williams 30th overall, the wide receiver 15. ETR ranks 45 overall, the wide receiver 23.
This is a bet on talent play for me. One of the most explosive and electrifying players in the league. Ben Johnson tried to keep everybody happy. I think the Lions are going to throw the football more. They have the third toughest schedule in the league. There is a chance that Jameson Williams can have such a big third-year breakout. He can actually take some target volume away from Amon-Ra St. Brown. The efficiency is just off the charts, and I want to bet on that talent.
The major difference here in terms of the rankings is we're trying to set people up to give them the best chance to win at fantasy football, not necessarily going out of our way to try and look smart, be right at the end of the season. And there's just no reason to take Jameson Williams at pick 30. I mean, you don't want to draft him at a point where he has to cut in to Amon-Ra St. Brown to pay off. You want that to be the bonus. Jameson Williams had a true breakout last year. Amon-Ra, still their go-to guys.
I am going to be scoring this not on do I like the player or not. I'm going to be scoring on who made the better argument. I am giving the edge to Mr. Evan Silva getting a win here first. If the only argument that Leone has is, well, we can get him later, that's a pretty thin argument.
Okay. Well, Leone just came out trying to get personal. I mean he started his argument like I'm trying to make some fashion statement out here.
Is your goal to win or to like look smart at the end of the season? I'm trying to get guys that are going to be
difference makers.
You're shook.
So this is one of the hardest ones we're starting with here because the machine was ahead of ADP on Jameson Williams. Silva was just ahead further. And that was kind of the crux of Leone's argument from the beginning, that we didn't need to be that high. And I'll also say this about Jameson Williams' season. It was not going that great until Sam Laporta went down. And then he really went nuts. But he was a difference maker down the stretch. So like, we're going to get to some here that are very clear cut. I would say this is the hardest one to grade. I think that where Leone, where the machine had Jameson Williams, is where if I could go back based on results, that's where I would take him. I do not think that I would take him 30th overall. I think I would take him 45th overall and be happy about that. His ADP, by the way, was somewhere in the 50s or 60s in a lot of leagues, 62.5 half PPR, as you see there in season long half PPR. So that's going to be a controversial decision. This is one of the hardest ones for sure. I think the key point though is Jameson was a hit for both, for both of these guys for sure.
Wide receiver in general was really weird this year. We've got a bunch of guys that we're going to go through, McMillan and Waddle, two other ones that They're just tough to grade because the wide receiver position was so bad overall that JMO finishes, wide receiver 18 per game, but he was a lot closer to like wide receiver 30 than he was to wide receiver 10. And
Yeah.
the total points weren't there. It's just the position was so bad that he eked out a bunch of guys by a little bit. I think a lot of these honestly are draws, which is super boring for the people out there. But
yes, we're not doing draws. All right. Let's get to some more clear-cut ones, hopefully, here for the judges' sake. Let's go to player 2, producer Ryan. Trey McBride. Silva is at 39 overall, the tight end 3 behind George Kittle. ETR ranks are at 25 overall, the tight end 2.
Trey McBride caught 17 more passes than George Kittle had targets last year. He's the alpha on his offense. The touchdowns for him are a legitimate knock, but they're also at a point where they just can't get any lower. And he was also amazing last year with 2 touchdowns. Certainly expecting George Kittle to have a higher yards per target, higher TD rate, but it's not going to be enough to offset a huge discrepancy in volume, especially if we catch any TD regression for Trey McBride. So there's going to be less pass volume. There's going to be CMC to contend with. There's going to be natural regression in the efficiency. Trey McBride, in terms of his volume earning ability, 2 years in a row, is just in a special tier of tight ends.
Strong argument there. Evan, go ahead on your reply.
Well, I think that Marvin Harrison Jr. has a chance to take a really big step forward.
I think that's enough.
Yes, a clear win there for Leone, as some of it was Jacoby Brissett getting into the saddle when Trey McBride really started going nuts, but this was an all-time season for Trey McBride, set the tight end record by catching 126 balls. Once Jacoby Brissett got in there, he turned the touchdown stuff around, scored 11 touchdowns. I mean, really just one of the best tight end seasons ever. So I think a clear win there for the machine, which had Trey McBride at 25 overall. Silva was at Trey McBride 39 overall here. ADP was around 28 in season long.
Yeah, I mean, George Kittle destroyed when he was in there. He got injured. Trey McBride benefited from Kyler Murray getting injured, destroyed when Jacoby Brissett was in there.
Oh my God, take the L, dude.
In terms of results, like obviously Leone wins. It's not even close.
All right. Let's go to player 3, Ken Walker. Silva is at 58 overall, the RB 19. Leone decently higher here, 41 overall, the RB 16.
Number one, there's a new offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak. I don't know for sure that Kenneth Walker is going to be the lead back in Seattle. I think it could be Zach Charbonnet. He's a very different kind of back than Kenneth Walker, and I think in all likelihood, they'll just end up splitting the workload.
Kenneth Walker, if we're making a bet in this range at running back, this is the type of bet you want to make. They've clearly signaled that they not only want to run the ball more, but they want to run much more efficiently. From a talent perspective, we know he has breakaway run ability. The head coach for Seattle has been gushing over Kenneth Walker since he got in there day one. This is not a split with Zach Charbonnet. This is Kenneth Walker's backfield.
I mean, when Silva was talking about this in the summer, I was like, man, I don't know. Kenneth Walker is so good. Charbonnet is just kind of like a plotter. Silva was dead on. They massively split this down the middle to the point where a bunch of weeks, Leone, we ended up with Charbonnet with a better projection than Walker in individual weeks here. So easy win for Silva here, who nailed the argument pretty much perfectly that Charbonnet would play more than the Walker people wanted Charbonnet to play.
Yeah, Silva was dead on here with the split from the very get-go to the start of the season through everything that they did. It was too much for Kenneth Walker to overcome, Silva being right on that workload distribution.
All right.
My biggest takeaway from these clips is that it looks like I added about 15 years and became a lot less patriotic over the course of a long football season.
All right. Let's go to player 4, which is Christian McCaffrey. We're going up towards the top of the board now. Christian McCaffrey. Silva is at 15 overall on Christian McCaffrey. Leone at 7. Very few people are going to be able to get Christian McCaffrey at your rank here of 15.
No one's going to get him. Purely an age and workload bet against Christian McCaffrey, 100%, because I think that there's just too much risk. Like, this is the best fantasy first round I can remember, and I acknowledge, like, I have a one-liner on every player. Obvious injury risk, but overall RB1 finish still very much in his range of potential outcomes. Probably my scariest fade.
If you just have in your mind, like, this guy's injury prone and he's old and I'm not going to take him. I don't know what I can say to convince you otherwise. I mean, these extremely talented fantasy stud backs that have made it to their age 29 season, the history is really good on these backs. I'm guilty of not paying enough attention to the calf injury last off season, but if you're playing this game and you're not taking the guy with the clearest, best ceiling case in all of fantasy football, I think you're doing it wrong and you need to just nut up and take a little bit of risk.
I'm going to give the win to Silva here just because I have no problem whatsoever being like, you know what, man, I'm just going to play it safe in round 1.
I think that's absolute cowardice.
Okay. He's calling the ref a coward. However,
I think he called us both cowards. Leone's in the room with a couple of cowards.
oh, well, what a call by Leone, as Christian McCaffrey did finish as arguably fantasy's most valuable player, finished as the running back 1 in both points per game and total points sustained health. I think what people like are watching this back now on January, whatever, February, whatever, when they watch it, at the time we recorded this, that was the consensus. Like, me and Silva's take was more of the consensus take. It was like, first round is so strong. Christian McCaffrey's health risks are scary enough where we love him, but maybe it's not worth the risk. And a lot of people felt that way. Leone was actually on an island here at the time and proved to be right. So credit to Leone. Huge win here. I'm pissed at myself because I'm like the biggest guy who, thinks it's impossible to predict injuries, and people that try to do it are doing a fool's errand. So yeah.
We did have the week 1 scare right away, though. If people will also forget
I was
that
feeling good
how well
going
the
into the
season
season.
went. But
yeah, going into week 1, there was a calf issue with McCaffrey. And after the calf issues in 2024, it was like, oh my God, here we go again, and yeah, he just.
And then he wound up having like the most touches of his entire career. So, I mean, this was a really, really big one for Leone. If we were to weight, our picks, I mean, this one should count like as 1.5 victories for Leone, if not 2.
Yeah, undoubtedly. I'm curious, Leone, real quick, like, are you going to have worry going to the 2026 season on McCaffrey's workload and age? Do you think that he's still, like, these guys that make it to age 30, age 31 are still good bets?
I think he's probably still going to be a good bet, but you got to factor in, Kittle's injured, which isn't great for the offense overall. It's another year for McCaffrey. He just put on a ton of touches. There's some other younger backs I like, so I probably won't be as into CMC as I was this year. We also saw and you called this out too, like, we're worried he might not be explosive in the run game. And he was able to be very good despite that, which is a great sign, but it's also not a great sign that he wasn't explosive again. So I'm sure I'll have him as a first rounder, but I doubt I'll have him RB1 overall. I'll probably have one of Silva's guys that we'll get to later.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, I was worried that McCaffrey wouldn't be that explosive a runner anymore at this age. And guess what? He wasn't. And it doesn't matter when your expected fantasy points each week are like 25, 26 when you're getting goal line stuff. And you're seeing as many targets as like the best wide receivers in the league also.
The 49ers had also traded for Brian Robinson like right before the season. So, I mean, there were red flags going in, but McCaffrey just wound up being too valuable to the offense. It's unbelievable really how over the course of the season they lost Kittle. Purdy was banged up for a little bit. Jawan Jennings was banged up all year. Pearsall played it, had like 5 effective games. And the engine that could was Christian McCaffrey.
All right. It is 3-1 Leone right now, heading to player number 5, Chris Olave. Silva's at 48 overall, the wide receiver 25 on Chris Olave. Leone 62 overall.
Similar to Jameson Williams, we're picking a player that both of us are ahead of ADP on. So, like, I have a tough time. I mean, I like Chris Olave. At a certain point, I think we're way too aggressive on a team that certainly does carry systemic risk. Do I think the market overvalues that? Yes, but I think Silva's also undervaluing, but like Jalen Waddle, Travis Hunter, Zay Flowers, Devontae Smith, these are players you can take ahead of Chris Olave.
Yeah, I'm just betting that Chris Olave can catch some positive injury luck. People say, oh, well, how can you say that when you just said all that about Christian McCaffrey? Chris Olave just turned 25 years old. His injuries are not soft tissue stuff and knees. I think they're going to be playing from behind all year. Obviously, they get to play so many games indoors. They play in a division where no one plays defense. And Kellen Moore not just wants to play fast. He wants to be the fastest team in the league this year. And I think he's going to get a ton of targets. And at the end of the day, day, like we are target hunting, especially in the 5th and 6th rounds. So I want to get Chris Olave on my teams this year.
Silva's cracked the code by being higher on players I'm higher on, so I can't make it a counter argument.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great
He's
strat.
cracked the scoring system.
Well, great win for Silva there. I mean, nailed it exactly how it ran out for Chris Olave. Olave was able to sustain health, and I think once Tyler Shuck got in there, and that was, I remember thinking back, like once Shuck didn't beat out Rattler, I was like, man, this sucks, because I thought there was some chance that Shuck could really help Chris Olave find his true ceiling. And when he lost that job, I was like, man, this sucks. But then he gets back in there, and Chris Olave was one of the guys that you needed down the stretch, maybe the most, if not one of the most valuable players in the fantasy playoffs. So yeah, clear win for Silva there. Great season for Chris Olave, as many people expected if he was just able to sustain health. So yeah.
Jamison Williams was also one of the guys that you needed in the second half. And my theory behind ranking Chris Olave was very similar to my theory behind where I ranked Jamison Williams. So I don't really understand how I don't win Jamison Williams and I win Chris Olave, but you're the judge.
Well, Chris Olave was one of the most important players in all fantasy. So that's why you win Chris Olave.
So was Jamison Williams in the second half of the season after Dan Campbell took over play calling duties in Detroit.
It is. We'll get into some more of these, but was a really weird year too, where a lot of these, both directions, either me being pro the player, Silva pro the player, where the first half of this season played out extremely differently than the second half of the season. We saw Jamison was the guy that Silva was on, who stunk the first half and was amazing the second half. We're going to get to another player that Silva was on that was like the exact opposite. Just a really strange year. So it's definitely, when you back up and zoom out, if you're tracking these, over the course of the season, it's a good lesson that it's a long season for sure, because Olave too was just like, okay, like he was startable, and then we get Shuck in there and we get the team rolling, and he goes from like okay to like, wow, this is probably one of the top 3 most important wide receivers in all fantasy football this season.
Yep. All right. 3-2 score right now. Let's go to player number 6, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard, Silva is at 59 overall. The RB20, Leone much lower, 74 overall.
Tony Pollard at this point isn't like the explosive back that we remember him with Dallas. And for non-elite backs, he's starting to get up there in age. When you're Christian McCaffrey, you survive into the early 30s. You're Derrick Henry, you survive. When you're Tony Pollard, the survival rates are a lot lower. You want players that are maybe a small loss, but a big hit. Tony Pollard's your small hit, big miss player when you're taking him over some of the rookies, RJ Harvey, Travion Henderson. Yeah, end of the season, he's probably going to be fine, but if he swings big one way or the other, he's much more likely to be a big bust than he is a big hit.
No, I think he can be a big hit. They've poured resources into this offensive line, multiple first-round picks, multiple big-ticket free agent signings. Tony Pollard is a high-floor pick. He has over 1,000 yards rushing in 3 straight seasons, and he has 96 catches over the last 2 years. The Tajay Spears thing, I mean, we went through that last year. Tony Pollard is way better than Tajay Spears. I think that Tony Pollard can finish as a top 12 fantasy back.
I mean, this is a win for Leone because Tony Pollard, like, you could have dropped him. I bet people dropped him at some point early in the season, mid-season, even like, weeks 11, 12. But then the guy catches absolute fire in the fantasy playoffs, had 3 straight games of 100-plus yards, December 7th, December 14th, December 21st, ended up being like a huge league winner in the playoffs. So to that extent, if you made it with Tony Pollard that far, he helped you. But I think on the whole, I would call this a win for Leone, as Tony Pollard was really, really bad. And I think Silva, like the Titans being worse than, like way worse than I even thought. I thought they'd be bad. They were like worse than I even thought that they could be this year. Really hurt Tony Pollard.
Yeah, and they fired their coach.
Yeah.
Their rookie quarterback took 1 million sacks. Along with firing their coach, they also lost their offensive line coach, Bill Callahan. He was supposed to be the impetus for them at least taking a little bit step forward. This is like one of the weirdest fantasy seasons that I can remember by Tony Pollard. And it kind of just goes to show you how much a running back can be a victim of their environment, because he did show at the end of the season that he's still a good player, but he looked like one of the worst players in the league for the first, 13 or 14 weeks.
Yeah. And he stayed healthy for pretty much the whole year and still only caught 33 balls, which, not ideal either, though. But yeah, I mean, I think a win for the machine there. All right. Let's go to player 7, Jalen Warren. Silva is at 69 overall. The running back 24. Leone 86 overall. The RB 29.
Yeah, and I've been pretty consistently ahead of market on Jalen Warren. I'm going to stay that way because I think he's a really good player. His broken tackle rate, really good in the passing game. Jalen Warren is a very reliable player, good in all facets. What if Caleb Johnson gets in the game and blows a blitz pickup? You think Aaron Rodgers is going to be cool with that? But I think that Jalen Warren is a player that has a high floor. He's going to have a locked-in role. He's going to be, at worst, flex usable.
I don't think this is the type of player you want to be 2 to 3 rounds ahead of ADP on. His efficiency fell off in a big way.
He was
dropped
hurt
from
last year.
5.3 yards per carry to 4.3 yards per carry.
Silva
talks about how Caleb Johnson could maybe mess up and get off the field. This guy they drafted to come in and replace Najee Harris, the veteran who has never broken out in a big way, that the team has never been willing to give a big workload to. That's the guy that's at risk when you bring in a rookie running back. I would much rather take Caleb Johnson over Jalen Warren straight up.
So Jalen Warren goes out there, busts his ass all year, shows toughness, playing through injuries, and Leone comes back and uses that against him. I mean, that is just a classic spreadsheet socialist move if I've ever seen one.
Oh, God, this is a hard one because
no, it's not.
You can give this one to Silva. Silva gets it on the results, but I have no regret in not being higher on Jalen
Capitulation.
Warren.
You love to
Silva
see it.
taking the win.
Yeah, so to be clear, Silva had Jalen Warren as his RB24, Leone at RB29, and in points per game, which I think is a better metric than total points, Jalen Warren finishes the RB19. So it is a win for Silva. I will say that at no point during the season was I like excited to start Jalen Warren on my fantasy team. And it could have gone right if Kenny Gainwell didn't become like the favorite of Aaron Rodgers and Arthur Smith and start going nuts. Like I thought that if they were going to throw the ball a lot, some would go to Gainwell, but some would also go to Jalen Warren. So much of the game plan down the stretch went through Kenny Gainwell, and that really hurt Jalen Warren. But on the whole, yeah, I think
that's what we remember. That's what's most fresh in our mind was Kenneth Gainwell having like 7 catch games, but Jalen Warren had almost 1,300 yards from scrimmage, 8 touchdowns, 40 receptions. No, he wasn't a super exciting pick, but I mean, you could get him as like your RB3 and use him because the offense in Pittsburgh this year revolved around the running backs, both of them.
Yeah, no doubt. He had a great season and he was fine. And I'm probably not going to make those bets, but Silva was right on how it transpired. So he definitely gets the W.
I will say, and also Leone gets penalized for saying he preferred Caleb Johnson to Jalen Warren straight up. Caleb Johnson ended up being one of the biggest busts in all of fantasy. Okay. Player 8, Jake Ferguson. Silva is at 96 overall, the tight end 9. Leone 125 overall, the tight end 15. Leone, I'll let you go first on Jake Ferguson.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit light on Jake Ferguson on the projections machine side of things and possibly a little bit light on Dallas. I'm very high on the Dallas passing offense. So I'll be fine if Silva wins this one.
Oh my God!
Wow,
premature capitulation. Evan, go ahead.
We're here to be honest. We're not here to dishonestly argue the other side.
Listen, the honest debate is something our country could certainly use. I don't think Evan would disagree.
I feel like we're reaching across the aisle here.
With that. This is a hard one. Jake Ferguson coming out of the gate was absolutely smashing. Down the stretch, he had some really bad games. He did not top 20 yards in any of his final 4 games. The tight end stuff is so hard because the bar is so low. I think I'm going to give this to Silva just based on it is valuable to have a tight end scoring at any point in the season, late, early, whatever. And so the first half that Jake Ferguson had, I think is valuable enough to give the win to Silva, but it's certainly not a runaway here. It's just kind of like the way tight end goes. If you have like 5 or 6 good games, it's probably a good enough season for you to be worth a pick at 100 overall, or roughly something like that.
Fact of the matter is, if we were doing Jake Ferguson is just a guy.
I mean, he didn't score double-digit fantasy points the last 11 weeks of the fantasy season. But tight end's so bad. that I think you probably should have just drafted one later, but I prematurely capitulated. I think we were pretty even on this one. It just wasn't a needle mover one way or the other.
All right, 4-4.
Hey, if you want to take this one and I'll take Jamison Williams, I'll trade you, Leone.
No, I prefer it the other way because it seems like you're more tilted the other way. So we're going to keep
it. All right, 4-4 score here through 8 picks. Teteroa McMillan. Silva is at 52 overall, the wide receiver 29. Leone decently higher here, 43 overall, the wide receiver 21.
Silva, I'm proud of you. You went very wide receiver heavy this year after being very running back heavy in these ranks.
I mean, look, you live and you learn, Leone. You live and you learn. I'm trying to get better every year. I don't feel like I've figured this whole thing out. Obviously you have, but I haven't. I'm trying to improve. I don't want to say anything bad about Tet McMillan because I love him. Leone is just hyper aggressive, which, dude, we've been talking about the whole show how I'm hyper aggressive on this guy, hyper aggressive on this.
You're like
go do
5
your
rounds
thing.
Hyper aggressive.
Do you, Leone? I respect it. I'm not capitulating, but do you?
We are aggressive on McMillan, who is the 8th overall pick in the draft. Absolutely nothing in his way in terms of earning a day 1 target share and a high day 1 target share. And this is the kind of guy where we have him ranked is maybe a small miss, but big hit player.
Oh, man, this is another tough one. Teteroa McMillan is going to be the offensive rookie of the year. He didn't blow me away at any point, and he didn't blow anyone away in fantasy either. Finished as the wide receiver 22 in points per game. It's tough because if I was going to go back, I don't think I'd take Ted McMillan in round 4, or round 5 based on the way that he played and the offense played and Bryce played and just the results. I don't think that I would really want him there. So, God, this is a really tough one. I think I'm going to give it to Silva just on Tet was never a real difference maker I never felt like I'm putting in Tet, here comes a 20 ball. I never really felt like that, even when he had really good matchups. So
I needed to get a win like this. I mean, Tet had a nice season, all things considered. When you consider everything around, he had 70 plus catches, he had over 1,000 yards, he had 8 touchdowns, but he didn't have those spiked weeks.
Right.
It's interesting. It's the opposite of the Jamison Williams season.
I think it's consistent grading with the Jamison Williams one, so I'm fine with this. I do think if you go back to the arguments I hit on McMillan as a small miss, big hit type of player, and we got the small miss season and he was fine. And those are sort of the bets that I want to make where he didn't have the huge rookie breakout and he still was basically in line with his ADP. So I'm kind of okay with that bet, but I agree with Adam from a results perspective. At no point in the season was he ever a clear-cut top starting wide receiver. You get these players, even Jalen Warren to an extent, where they just survived the season. I know we say per game is better than total for that, but even per game has bias in surviving the entire season, where there's going to be segments of the season where other players emerge that maybe didn't have a role before and are clearly better starts than McMillan or clearly better starts than Jalen Warren that are still going to end of the day with a lower per game rank because it took them some time to get there or they were only there for segments. And McMillan at no point had a segment where, he was clearly the guy. He basically had one huge spike week and a bunch of decent weeks.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, not his fault. I think he showed he's really, really good NFL player and a hit for the Panthers. But obviously Bryce Young struggles in the way that they played a lot of these games. Very, very, very conservative. Was not great for Teteroa McMillan. All right. It is 5-4 Silva heading to player number 10. Trevor Lawrence, QB 10 for Silva, QB 20 for Leone.
Yeah, I just think with each passing year, we start to get a little bit concerned as to how good Trevor Lawrence truly is. You've got CJ Stroud, who 2 years ago we were taking in the Joe Burrow range. You've got Jared Goff, but Silva himself has said how this is a team that's probably going to have to throw a lot more. Dak, I prefer him. Younger guys in Bo Nix, Drake May, who have more rushing upside. JJ McCarthy, who if he's just 80 to 90% Sam Darnold, is going to outscore Trevor Lawrence.
We're just going to talk about every quarterback in the league or what?
Well, these are all the quarterbacks you have ranked behind Trevor Lawrence, and maybe
Are we
head to
talking
head,
about
you
my
can make a case
rankings
for
or are we
Lawrence
talking
over
about
one of
Trevor
them.
Lawrence here?
We're quite literally talking about the rankings. That's why Trevor Lawrence should be closer to QB 20 than QB 10, Silva, because that's the debate.
The exact way Leone came out there describing Trevor Lawrence, we don't know how good he is with each passing year. He's been through different coaches. He's been through different offenses. Who does that sound exactly like? That's the exact same profile of Baker Mayfield.
And Baker's going QB 9, one spot.
And I think that Liam
profit next
Cohen,
year. This is what I talk about having to be right.
when we hit the gavel
If he
here,
goes
Leone,
100%
don't make
right,
me cut your mic.
I mean, I think that Liam Cohen is a really big deal. Liam Cohen last year encouraged Baker Mayfield to run more. And I think that Trevor Lawrence can run. This can be the year that Trevor Lawrence takes the leap. And I'm willing to bet on that.
Man, Silva nailed that one. You know, it looked a little bit rough for Trevor Lawrence at first. Catches absolute fire down the stretch and proves to be an actual difference maker at quarterback. And it is not easy to be a difference maker at quarterback unless you are one of these true Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen dual threat types. Trevor Lawrence was a difference maker. Yeah, he got a bunch of rushing touchdowns from short, but a lot of it was just improved efficiency, more volume, better play. And obviously Liam Cohen thing had a lot to do with it. Trevor Lawrence finished as the QB6 in points per game. So yeah, pretty clear win there for Silva. And I think like a reminder to me every year that there are a lot of quarterbacks in this mid-range that have ceilings, and especially for best ball, like stacking quarterback through the mid-range is something that I really, really like to do always in best ball and continue to do going forward. So yeah, I think pretty clear win there for Silva on T-Law.
It's also wild, again, like it's a long season. The first 9 games of the year, Lawrence was over 7 yards per attempt one time and had 2 multi-pass TD games. And, you know, I was chalking this up as a pretty easy W. The rest of the season, every single game, he had 7 yards per attempt or higher. He had multiple passing touchdowns in every single game except one of those. So pretty crazy. Definitely a win for Silva there. Was way, way, way ahead of ADP on T-Law.
All right, let's go to player 11. Jalen Waddle, Silva 35 overall, the wide receiver 19. Leone 53 overall, the wide receiver 29.
I think that there is a chance that Jalen Waddle can emerge as the Dolphins' #1 receiver this year. He's 4.5 years younger than Tyreek Hill. There's off-field stuff and there's on-field stuff with Tyreek Hill that I want to stay away from. And I think that betting on the younger player, almost a half decade younger, betting on him to take a step forward, I think that that's the smart play here.
Talking about us being aggressive, being 2 rounds ahead on McMillan, we're 2 rounds ahead on Waddle, and Silva's another 2 rounds ahead on that, which is hard for me to wrap my head around as far as playing the game of fantasy football. I do like a lot of the bull case Silva makes, but at some point we have to acknowledge, you know, he was wide receiver 22 in points per game in 2023, dipped to wide receiver 49 last year. Obviously the team had all sorts of issues. It's a condensed offense that has tons of holes on defense. They're going to have to throw. We saw how high the targets per route run can get for both Waddle and Tyreek. I really like Jalen Waddle, but it shouldn't be 4 rounds ahead of ADP on Waddle. 2 is more than enough.
Yeah, and Jalen Waddle finished the season with only 910 yards, even though he stayed healthy for the whole season, even though Tyreek Hill was out for most of the season. And that is like a pretty big red flag to me on Jalen Waddle. Pretty clean run out for him, and he still finished as the wide receiver 28 in points per game. So I think a pretty clear win there for the machine, Mr. Leone, to stop this losing streak here for him. Jalen Waddle just, I'm kind of getting tired of making excuses for him, if I'm being honest. Like, we made the excuses at quarterback. We made the excuses Tyreek's taking too much. Achane's taking. At some point, there's just not enough excuses for Jalen Waddle after this has been going on. He's now 27 years old. So, yeah, really disappointing season for Waddle, I thought. All right. Player 12. This one has swept the nation, Evan. I mean, I'm in drafts now, and I see Jahmyr Gibbs going 1 overall, and I'm like, that Silva did it.
By the end of this season, people will talk about him like that's the best running back in the league. This guy had 20 touchdowns. Dave Montgomery can still be a fine player, but I think this offense moves in the direction of Jahmyr Gibbs. because the Lions aren't going to be as good. They are going to be, I think, more like a 9 to 11 win team. And I think their throw rate is going to go up, which Leone agrees with me on. But I think he can get up into the 70 catch range, and that would be friggin' huge for Jahmyr Gibbs.
There are some very good quotes on Gibbs playing more, but I think it's a little unfair to kind of just act like this season's going to go a very particular way. Is it in the ceiling range of outcomes for Jahmyr Gibbs? Absolutely. Another situation where Silva has to be dead on right, and he's more right than almost anyone out there. But I don't, as a fantasy player, want to put myself in a position where I absolutely have to be right. Maybe Jahmyr Gibbs' 99.9th percentile ceiling is a bit higher than these guys, but the 95th percentile ceiling that's more likely to occur is not higher. If you're going to chase that type of ceiling, why bury CMC and up Jahmyr Gibbs? I get kind of the injury risk thing there, I guess. But if you're sitting there with the 101 and you can take Jamar Chase, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, I think it's too cute to take Jahmyr Gibbs.
The other thing that I would say is,
it was a great argument, Leone. You were right. You won that one. It's a better argument. I'm not moving Jahmyr Gibbs, but he had a better argument.
This is a hard one because Jahmyr Gibbs had an insane season. However, during the fantasy playoffs, Bijan Robinson outplayed him. And when you're parsing hairs, we're talking about machine 4 overall, man 1 overall. You're parsing in these really small windows. I think it's a hit kind of for both of you. But the way that Bijan just smashed Gibbs down the stretch, and it was a little bit fluky, but it is what it is. Gibbs failed in week 15, week 16 to some degree, although he did end up having a bunch of receiving production that game. And week 17 he was a massive fail. So really, really tough run out there at the end for Jahmyr Gibbs. So I will give this win to Leone. But I thought, Silva's point, people are saying that. What you said there, Silva, people were saying that Jahmyr Gibbs is the best running back in the NFL now. People are saying that now.
Yeah. In week 14, which is when I was feeling really good about the Jahmyr Gibbs pick. Real good about the Jahmyr Gibbs, on top of the world good.
Yeah.
It's also was an interesting debate because I think we both got some things right and both got some things wrong. At the end of the day, process-wise, I think Silva hit on a really good player. It's just Bijan Robinson, CMC were also there and they hit. And I think that was part of my argument. But, going into next year, we've seen continued separation. Gibbs is going to be in play for the 101.
No doubt.
We were both higher on Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson than Saquon Barkley, though. So that's a win for both of us.
I liked Saquon, so that was a bust for me.
Yeah,
I had CMC in that group, so I was, I guess, 2 for 3. But I did like Barkley. I had too much Barkley.
By the way, Leone mentioned Gibbs in play for 1.01 next year. If you are a real sick puppy, our rankings for 2026 best ball are live. Yes, contests are open on Underdog, coming soon on DraftKings and Drafters as well. So if you have the best ball product, again, 2026 rankings are indeed live right now for the true virgins out there. Let's go to player 13. Brian Thomas, Silva 7 overall, Leone 14 overall, more in line with market there.
Just like we're going to be talking about Jahmyr Gibbs as the best running back in the NFL after the year, I think we're going to be talking about Brian Thomas as the best wide receiver in the NFL.
I think that's enough.
I should be fired and replaced with John Daigle.
Man, I don't think anyone could have predicted what happened with Brian Thomas Jr. Silva was higher than market on him. I think the entire market, though, thought Brian Thomas should go around the 1-2 turn early 2 here. So it's not like Leone and the machine or the ETR top 300 had a fade on Brian Thomas Jr. We just weren't going out of our way to take him. But clearly being higher than market on Brian Thomas Jr. is a loss for Silva. I'm curious what you think happened here, Leone. This is him and Ladd McConkey are I can't recall things like this happening where you go from so good as a rookie to unusable as a sophomore.
I need to dig into it some more this offseason, but my initial instincts are I have no idea. It really, at wide receiver in particular, when you are that successful in both target earning and per route efficiency, as those two players were year one, and you go into year two with solid quarterback play for both of these guys. It's not like they got sunk by terrible quarterback play. really have no explanation, and they're going to be two really intriguing guys to try and figure out how to rank for next season.
Yeah, we're gonna do a show, Silva, next week, I believe, or maybe in 2 weeks. Takeaways, like what we got right, what we got wrong, and what we can learn from. I don't even know on Brian Thomas Jr., but any initial thoughts for you on what went wrong with Brian Thomas
No,
Jr.?
sometimes there just is no takeaway. Like you got something wrong. And I don't think that this was particularly foreseeable. A lot of people will be like, oh, well, he was just a product of Mac Jones, but he was also a first-round pick in the NFL draft and was unbelievably productive at LSU. So it's not like, oh, we're just going off like an 8-game sample of Mac Jones. I mean, this guy was an unbelievable product. Remember, Leone was higher than anybody on Brian Thomas entering the NFL. He nailed that. But I don't think that he nailed that just because Mac Jones was the quarterback for half of the season in 2024. Like, this guy's prospect profile he's an unbelievable athlete.
All right, let's go to player 14. Score right now: Machine, Leone 7, Man, Silva 6. As we head to player 14, Jackson Smith in Jigba. A long-standing bit, of course, on this show is what Brian Hartline thinks. Brian Hartline thinks Jackson Smith in Jigba is the best receiver he's ever had.
You know, I actually went back and fact-checked that, and he said it was Marvin Harrison Jr.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Brian Hartline, the Ohio State wide receivers coach, I mean, he said that JSN was the best out of all of them. You know better than Brian Hartline?
I think I do. In this case, Marvin Harrison's better than Jackson Smith and Jigba. So yeah, I'll take that one. Bring it on, Hartline.
Dude, I Googled it and I looked at it and I was like, oh shit. Like, but the bit was a farce.
Oh, it's amazing. I want to like JSN as much as Silva does. I just have concerns over the identity of this team being a bit more of a run-first football team. I have some concerns over the quarterback play. Having him in a half PPR ranks ahead of Bucky Irving, Josh Jacobs, Omarion Hampton, T. Higgins, the elite quarterbacks. You're really, again, paying for the top here.
Jackson Smith and Jigba was a first-round pick. He's 23 years old. He's coming off a 100-catch breakout season. You know, with minimal target competition and what I believe is fairly stable quarterback play. These young receivers, like, these guys are absolute studs, guys that I want to bet on, guys that I want to get on my fantasy teams. I have a ton of JSN.
JSN turned out to be maybe the best pick in all of fantasy relative to where he went, going to be the offensive player of the year in the NFL, had a truly historic season and like carried the Seahawks and carried fantasy teams. He was just so consistent. Every week I was like, well, you know, maybe JSN this week is going to fall off. He'll get 12. This dude was just like 20 ball every single week, it felt like. So yeah, clear win there for Silva as JSN finishes as the wide receiver 2 in points per game. Leone,
Silva said CMC was worth 1.5. This one's worth 1.5 for Silva for sure. And, you know, Seattle was run heavy and it just didn't matter. If there's one thing I could go back in time and teach my brain, it's that Sam Darnold was actually good last year and it wasn't just the Vikings system, because not only did I get JSN wrong, I got a lot of the Vikings stuff wrong, kind of all stemming from that lynch point of not giving Sam Darnold, you know, nearly enough credit. And I'm not saying Sam Darnold made JSN. This was a great pick because JSN, as Silva said, just an absolute baller he wanted on his team. It didn't matter that they were run heavy because his targets per route run were so high. But the one thing that I think most kept me back here, that I was too worried about Sam Darnold's ability.
Yep, for sure. And I know Silva and I talked about this on Team by Team, but Clint Kubiak like did an incredible job, and JSN having Clint Kubiak, I think made a huge difference there. So
also shout out to Brian Hartline, new head coach at Kent State.
Shout out to him. Okay, it is 7-all right now. Producer Ryan has put together a lightning round of clips for the final 6 here. I will give my judgments after we listen to this lightning round of clips from the original Man vs. Machine. Christian Kirk.
You know, I don't know about you, Adam, but I think that I heard a little hint of capitulation with Leone saying that he concedes that Silva will probably end up being closer to Christian Kirk's final result.
And you are also both wrong.
Jaden Blue, allegedly lazy, as we talked about on yesterday's show.
You know what? Some guys that are that talented, they don't have to work as hard.
Well, maybe you should.
Matthew Golden.
First round wide receiver that the market overthinks with Brian Thomas last year.
Matthew Golden is not like Brian Thomas.
He's not Brian Thomas. He's not as talented as Brian Thomas. He's going 2 rounds.
He did not
later.
have a fake 40 time.
But you're overconfident in your assessment of him. I don't know if he's going to be good. I'm not going to sit here and break down Matthew Golden and tell you for sure he's going to be good. I don't know.
You nailed Brian Thomas last year. This guy is not like Brian Thomas. Brian Thomas scored 17 touchdowns to lead the nation in his final season.
He's not like Brian Thomas.
Right.
He's not as nearly as good of a prospect.
Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say right out of the gate, I don't feel super strongly on this one.
Okay, I'm giving the win to Silva here. Leone came out of the gate and just capitulated right away in his argument, which if you've ever been to debate school, you can just capitulate. Jerry Jeudy.
I still don't know how good Jerry Jeudy is.
Silva has a willingness to take on Chris Olave in a super aggressive way on a team that has
I know that Chris Olave is good.
Quarterback.
I know that Chris Olave is good.
If you knew it was Joe Flacco. So you're
There's
going to
no
say we can get him
Joe
at
Flacco is going to be the quarterback all season. I can tell you that. Like
we're getting Jerry Jeudy at this 6.
You're just hoping
Could you let
that
me
he
finish?
gets in there.
Hold on, don't make me mute.
Decorum. Let's show a little decorum, please.
I've made my points and I rest my case. Just rack up another win for Leone.
I'm gonna give this one to Silva.
It's a miracle.
Cue the Many Men song. Ricky Pearsall.
I think that there's a blind spot in Leone's model that doesn't account for guys who were first-round picks who went through some kind of tumultuous things in their rookie years, didn't have like the efficiency marks that he's looking at. That's why he missed on Jackson Smith and Jigba. That's why he missed on Jamison Williams, and now he's going to miss on Ricky Pearsall.
I'm being gaslit.
Because he can't fit context into his spreadsheet. The guy got shot. And you're going to hold that against them. You're literally
I'm not holding it.
that
I'm saying
them.
this guy's had one good week in his entire NFL career.
Final score. Silva 11, Leone 9.
This is outrageous.
So I scored it 11-9 in favor of Silva on the first one. Just to recap for anyone who was on the lightning round, Leone won Christian Kirk. Obviously, Christian Kirk was unusable, droppable pretty early on. Leone won Jaden Blue, who literally never even got a chance. Silva won.
Balled out in week 18, though.
Balled out in week 18. Silva won Matthew Golden argument by being lower than Leone on Matthew Golden, who never really hit until, I guess, the last week, you could say. Also, Justin Fields, Leone was lower on, and that proved to be right. Jerry Jeudy, Silva was lower on. That proved to be right. And so going into the final one, Pearsall, I have it scored right now, Leone 10, Silva 9, and Ricky Pearsall pending. Now, Ricky Pearsall was a win for Silva if he had stayed healthy. And I don't like judging these things. I don't like judging these things based on who stayed healthy and who didn't. It sounds like you disagree, Leone. You don't think that if Ricky Pearsall had stayed healthy, he showed a ton early on, he was going to be a hit. You don't think that Pearsall was going to be a hit?
I mean, we have the per game rank up there. It's not, if you look at his targets per route run, when he played with everybody healthy, he was a distant fourth, which is exactly what we said.
So in his first game, when he was actually healthy, before this PCL or whatever he had 4 catches for 108 yards. In week 3, he had 8 catches for 117 yards. He seemed to like come back and not be healthy, at least to me, until the very end. And he still didn't seem that healthy, but still had 6 for 96, 5 for 85 down there in December. So I honestly want to call this a no contest on Ricky Pearsall because we don't know what would have happened if he didn't get hurt. And I do not think that we should be having injuries play a role in these debates. That's my lean on it from the judge's chair here. Silva, do you want to say anything about Ricky Pearsall's season?
Well, the crux of Michael Leone's anti-Ricky Pearsall argument was that he just didn't think that Ricky Pearsall was that good. He wasn't that good of a prospect. I think that at least Ricky Pearsall showed us that he is good when he is healthy. Obviously, I think that this should be a win for Leone because, I mean, you want to get results at the end of the day. But I feel good about Ricky Pearsall, my analysis of him as a player and potentially going forward. But I mean, I still think that Leone deserves the win here.
Yeah, well, I'm going to call this one. Go ahead.
When you had Kittle, Jennings, and CMC on the field, CMC 21% target per route run, Kittle 23%, Jennings 21%, Ricky Pearsall 16%. That's exactly how we thought it was going to play out. Juwan Jennings was a better per game producer and was being drafted after Ricky Pearsall.
And Pearsall was playing through an extremely debilitating PCL.
Every year. Last year he was shot. This year he's playing.
Rendered him a decoy in several games. And when he was not a decoy, he was highly productive. One of the best route runners in the NFL.
Okay. All right. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Stop the steal. Okay. I'm going to call that one a no contest, which leaves the final score of 2025 man versus machine. Leone, 10 wins. Silva, 9 wins. Congrats to Leone, our 2025 man versus machine champion. I just want to say, people don't realize, like, maybe they do. Actually, I think a lot of people do, but it is really, really hard to do this stuff and then turn around and look back and see how dumb we sounded or how smart we sounded, etc. Huge shout out to both Leone and Silva for always being willing to go out there, debate this stuff, come back, listen to some really stupid stuff that we said, look like idiots some of the time, hopefully look smart more of the time. But yeah, shout out to these guys for putting it out there and coming back and going over everything. We will continue to look back at the 2025 season over the next couple weeks on the podcast. Silva and I will have a more serious look back on some takeaways that we could have from our biggest hits and misses. Stay tuned for that episode. But yes, Man vs. Machine has become like our most popular show. I know Silva's like getting stopped on the street. I'm getting stopped on the street. People are cursing me out because they think I did a bad job judging the original Man vs. Machine in August. So this has become a real life of its own. I see like people are ripping off our IP. Other people are trying to do Man vs. Machine stuff. We're going to have to patent our very valuable IP here. Oh.
Well, Silva and I obviously each will get a ton wrong. Like you said, Adam, it's really hard to do this stuff and rank this stuff. And these are players we disagreed with, but I do think patting ourselves on the back a little bit. We covered 20 players in a season where there weren't a ton of league winners. Between me and Silva, one of us was really high on Trey McBride, CMC, Chris Olave, Trevor Lawrence, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. A quarter of that list was
what you needed.
Was the most, a good chunk of the most important players in all of fantasy. So good teamwork there, Silva.
Yep. Yeah. I thought we had a really, really good year in the season-long streets. Hopefully you guys all benefited from that. All right. That's a wrap for Man vs. Machine 2025. Last shout out. Hopefully you guys watching this on YouTube. Producer Ryan put in a ton of effort to compiling all these clips, doing all the graphics. Please watch this on YouTube. Check it out for sure. A lot of effort put in by producer Ryan there to make this a really fun and cool episode. 4, Leone. For Silva, producer Ryan, producer Luke, everyone behind the scenes at ETR. I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.